Today's episode, we have a Locked On Pistons and Locked On Rockets crossover with me, Khahil, and Jackson Gatlin. We'll get into how these rebuilds have grown over the last 5 years and how they compare to each other. Today's episode, Locked On Pistons and Locked On Rockets.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. You guys are also listening over on Locked On Rockets. I appreciate you guys making Locked On Pistons and Rockets your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. I'm your host, Khahil. I've been covering the Locked On Pistons, or covering the Detroit Pistons, over the last 4 years for the Locked On Network. 3 years I've been a credential media member. That's Jackson. He is host of the Locked On Rockets podcast. He is one of the best at the network. Absolutely love Jackson. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All that good stuff. Hit that subscribe button, 5-star review. You guys get all of that. But Jackson, is this the first time we've done a crossover? I've been here for 4 years. Is this the first time we've done one?
It is actually, which is kind of crazy because you would have thought that during like the real down bad years that we would have been like, you know, just misery loves company. We would have been like hanging out, just, hey, like, let's take a look at these lottery picks. Like, what's going on? Bottom of the barrel teams got to stick together. And now Pistons are on the come up, just like the Rockets. They took their step forward. I think the Pistons are poised to take another significant step forward this year. And that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at in today's episode, is kind of the trajectory of these two teams, right? The Rockets maybe a little bit ahead of where the Pistons are at right now, kind of analyzing some of the, you know, the decisions that the Rockets have made along the way, some of the things that we can maybe expect from the Pistons. You know, are they close enough to maybe make an all-in move of their own right, similar to how the Rockets did with their Cade blockbuster trade this summer? We're going to get into all that. It's going to be a fun episode.
Yeah, that's an angle I can't wait to get to. We'll definitely talk about that later, comparing where the Rockets are at right now, who just traded for Kevin Durant, to where the Pistons are right now. We'll get into that much later, but let's start with 5 years ago. These teams were, they started at the exact same point, basically. They were both rebuilding around the exact same time. At the time of the Cade, Cunningham, Jalen Green draft, like, that seemed to be like the both teams' franchise player. Now, obviously, Sengun ended up elevating to being this franchise guy for you guys. You guys ended up getting Kevin Durant for Jalen Green, but the Pistons and Rockets were coming up at the exact same times. I want to talk with you and just ask you this. Obviously, the Rockets are at a good point right now. They've gotten to a good spot. What was the process like? Were there times where you felt like, don't know where this is going, this might not be going the right way, or was it just smooth sailing? Like, what was this process like now that the Rockets are considered contenders in the Western Conferences? What was this process like?
Yeah, I think that, you know, obviously the down years are really rough, right? So the actual rebuilding years, the tanking years, the Rockets, like they like to call it phase one of the rebuilding process. Those years with Steven Silas as the head coach, those are some real lean years, right? 17, 19, 20 wins. Like, it was brutal. And so it was really hard to, you know, not miss the forest for the trees, I guess, back then, because when you're in the trenches, when you're living it every single day, either as a fan of an organization, as a media member covering an organization, it can be a lot, right? To deal with the 50 plus, 60 plus, lost seasons, a lot of negativity, a lot of question marks about the future. Really, the biggest stepping stone and the biggest point moving forward for the Rockets, and I think this is actually the case for the Pistons as well, right? Coaching has such a significant impact. Yeah. And you bring in the right coach, a guy that can get guys to buy into a scheme, to buy into a culture, or to establish a culture, I should say, and to have an identity, right, for an organization that pays serious dividends. And I think that's what the Rockets established when they went out and got Ime Udoka. They had done their 3 years of losing, their little rebuild window, and they were like, okay, you know what, we're identifying, it's time now to take that next step forward. We have the top end talent that we like. We feel good about all these top end draft picks, about all the first round picks that we've acquired over the years, and now we're going to take that significant step. We're going to add a legitimate, arguably top 5 head coach in the NBA in Ime Udoka. And then on top of that, adding the veterans, the stabilizing pieces, right? The training wheels for these young guys, right? Adding Fred VanVleet, adding Dylan Brooks, adding Uncle Jeff Green, right? And that's what really helped take the Rockets from being one of the laughing stocks of the NBA into that area where they were actually playing competitive, respectable basketball. Now, granted, they didn't have quite the jump that the Pistons did from being, Pistons being irrelevant to being in the playoffs this past season. That was a significant leap for Detroit. The Rockets barely missed the playoffs that first year, but really that's where it started, right? And it kind of feels like that's where things started for the Pistons too. Obviously, Cade has been the guy, and there was so much optimism about his future and what he could be on a team that was actually competing at a high level, but they just weren't able to translate things to wins. But then you get JB in the mix, and suddenly, you add JB, you add a couple vets, and then suddenly things look a lot different. So it's kind of a similar blueprint that the Rockets and Pistons have utilized here.
Yeah, the thing is that there's so much. Like when I look at the Rockets, I mean, last year during the losing season that was, or I guess that's 2 seasons ago now, we referenced a lot the Rockets on the podcast. We talked about them a lot during the offseason because there are differences. There's a lot of differences, which we'll eventually get to as well. But there are also a lot of similarities, like you mentioned. The Pistons this past year, they took this jump because they moved on from a head coach that maybe didn't work out. Rockets moved on from Steven Silas. They get Ime Udoka. Now things blow up for them. Pistons, they move on from Monty Williams, which let's not spend too much time with that, but they move on from Monty and bring in JB Bickerstaff. That does a world of difference. That helps change the culture. Ime Udoka's helped change the culture in Houston. And then you bring in veterans. Like you mentioned, the Houston brought in a ton of veterans. And something I really like that Houston did at the time, the Pistons didn't maybe go this aggressive, but Houston put a lot of money into going after their veterans too. They put a lot of money into going after FVV. They put a lot of money into going after Dylan Brooks to really help establish that culture. The Pistons maybe didn't invest that much in financially, but roster spots and minutes in the rotation, they did the same thing this past year with Tobias Harris. He helped change it. Malik Beasley, unfortunate situation going on right now, but helped change it. THJ helped change it. Paul Reed, who's not even that old, but just has been in the league for a minute, and helps, change a locker room. He came in and helped it. So I think there's a lot of similarities in which how the Houston Rockets and how the Pistons took the jump to, like you mentioned, the Pistons were the laughingstock, man. I was getting called to talk about the Pistons from overseas, talk about how are they this bad? How is that possible? Like it was bad. Like it was bad. And then in just one offseason, it flipped just like that, just off of bringing in a good veteran coach and bringing in some veterans to help really grow these young guys and help grow this organization where they're at right now to taking that next step. Another question I had for you, Jackson, is, was there at any point during, because I felt like the Pistons didn't, there is one thing I felt like they had, at least in the Pistons community, that kind of kept optimism alive even during the down stretches, that the Pistons felt like, or at least the community felt like, okay, Cade's the guy. Whether this actually works out or not, we feel confident that eventually it should, because we feel like Cade can be that dude. I don't feel like there was much waver in that from the Pistons side, even though it did get dark at times during the 2 seasons ago. Was there any time during the Rockets rebuild when it was like, do we have that? Like, are we confident this is going to be it? Like, do we have, because there's a lot of dark, you mentioned, there's a lot of dark moments that go on when you're in the rebuilding process. Was there any of that going on?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, you can argue that some of that is actually still going on. And that's arguably the reason that they felt, that they needed to go out and get a guy like Kevin Durant, is because, unfortunately, as good as the Rockets have been, they took this massive step forward. They finished number 2 in the Western Conference, one of the best teams in the NBA all season long. They didn't have a clear-cut guy, right? And Şengün has been absolutely incredible. He's clearly been the team's best player for the last 2 seasons, but is Alperen Şengün on the same tier as Cade Cunningham? I don't think so. Like, I think Cade takes the cake there. Now, I'm not going to say it's not like a massive gap. Şengün was, a couple of votes away from being an all NBA player himself. Yep. Right. So, Şengün is right there. The gap is very narrow, but unfortunately at the end of the day, it is a guard or perimeter player dominated league, and Cade Cunningham being the guy who has the ball in his hands, who orchestrates the offense, who is a floor raiser for the entire Pistons team, that'll always probably carry a little bit more weight than Şengün's role, or at least Şengün's role is a little bit more limited in the fact that he still needs a guard to set him up in the pick and roll. He still needs guys to capitalize on, when he does attract a double team, being able to capitalize on his offensive gravity, which Cade does as well, right? Like you've been there and seen that, what it looks like when Cade does all the work and drives and, has a beautiful kick out, and then guys aren't able to convert on those opportunities. That's been a lot of what Alperen Şengün has dealt with for the past 2 years. So there absolutely was a lot of that, right? And that's where the Pistons actually have I guess, a competitive advantage over the Rockets is they were able to identify much earlier on, Cade Cunningham is our guy. The Rockets wanted Jalen Green to be that guy. And unfortunately, Jalen had his highs. He had his moments where he looked incredibly talented and looked like he could be the future face of the organization, be a future all-star and one of the top tier, scorers in the league. But then he also had a lot of lows. He also had a lot of inconsistency problems. And at the end of the day, the Rockets identified that and said, you know what? You got 4 years, you got a playoff series, and we've seen enough to feel confident in at least making the decision to not bank on your future potential, because Jalen Green may very well still become an all-star. He still may maximize his potential down the line, but the Rockets think they have a better chance to win in the here and now with Kevin Durant as their best player, which is why they made that trade in the first place. I think right now for Houston, you're looking at it, and a lot of Rockets fans, a lot of pundits, whatever, you got it penciled in that Amen Thompson's probably going to be the face of this franchise moving forward. He's only played 2 years in the NBA, and the exponential level of growth that he's displayed in those 2 short years is unbelievable. Like, I think we're about to have a massive Amen Thompson year 3 leap on our hands. The Rockets are trusting him as one of their primary ball handlers moving forward, despite his limited ball handling reps last season. That speaks volumes about their confidence and their faith in him as a player moving forward. And so I think it'll be a lot easier to see this next season. Okay, cool. KD's the best player, but Amen is on the come up. And as long as you've got Amen and Şengün, that is an incredible 1-2 dynamic duo to build your team around moving forward. It just took a little while for them to really get to that point of identifying that. They had to wade through the couple of years of Jalen Green first and really exhaust that avenue before they were like, all right, you know what? We gave you chances. It's not going to work out with you. Now we're going to re-identify, okay, Şengün, the torch is yours. Amen, the torch is yours. Show us what you got.
That's actually where I want to get to next when we come up, is that the Rockets made a decision on a guy in their young core and moved on from him. The Pistons still have all of their guys here. I kind of want to compare those situations to get Jackson's thoughts on how did Houston decide it was time? Can the Pistons take some advice? Can the Pistons look at Houston and kind of figure out when they should try to pull the trigger? We'll talk about that all coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends and family? Maybe it's a game day and suddenly you realize that you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without all the stress. With the money you save on the tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes it all possible. For someone like me who's a procrastinator, I wait till the last second with everything. It often screws me over when it comes to buying tickets, but with Game Time, it saves me because it has last minute ticket deals, even sometimes after the event has already started. Even if I procrastinate and wait till the last second, I still get the best tickets possible. And that's why I love using Game Time anytime I go to any sporting event. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed with Game Time. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons and Locked On Rockets your first listen of every single day. We appreciate it and appreciate all the first listeners of every single podcast. I appreciate all of you guys, all the support. Make sure you guys check my description down below for the Substack and the playback. I just wrote an article on Marcus Sasser. If you guys want to check that out over on my Substack, it will be linked down below for the Locked On Pistons listeners. And hey, Houston, you guys are, Marcus Sasser. You guys should know about Marcus Sasser. If you guys are interested,
hey, man,
go ahead.
Marcus Sasser's nice.
Go ahead and check it out. He's a diamond. He's a gem, not a diamond. He's a hidden gem on the Pistons roster. So if Houston wants a scoring guard, they can come in and score in bunches. Maybe they, show some interest. But let's get into the next part of this. So what I was really interested in talking with you about, Jackson, and I'm sure we'll dive even further into this, is obviously Houston decided to take that swing this offseason. They went and got Kevin Durant, one of the greatest players we've ever seen, still playing at an extremely high level. They went out and made this swing. And later on the podcast, we'll go complete comparisons between Houston, Detroit, see if any team, if the Pistons have any advantages anywhere over Houston. Kind of discuss that a little later. But I just wanted to ask you, Houston decided to move on from Jalen Green. He was drafted in the same draft class as Cade Cunningham. And outside of that, Houston's held on to a lot of their young guys. They've had Sengun still. They have Tari Eason still. They have, obviously, Amen. They still have Reed Shepard. They have a lot of their young guys. The Pistons also still have a lot of their young guys. They haven't really moved on from anybody. But Houston decided it was time for them to go and make the move, and they parted from one of their young guys. I wanted to get your perspective. How did Houston get to the point of, okay, we are at the point where it's time for us to trade one of the guys. We need to move on, and this is when we push our chips in. How did you get to this point, and how do you realize you're at that point, I guess?
I think a big part of it is, one, the success that they had this past season. It became really easy to identify, hey, what was the Achilles heel of this Rockets team? Where did they need to improve the most? And very clearly it was they didn't have a reliable go-to scorer. They didn't have a reliable alpha scorer who could take over the game, when needed, who could, shoulder those clutch time moments, all that stuff. And unfortunately, right, on paper, that guy was supposed to be Jalen Green, and he could be that guy sometimes, but he was not that guy other times. And when he wasn't that guy, it made it really difficult for the Rockets to win games. So yes, that's a lot of pressure to put on a very, very young player, but at the same time, he had 4 years to show that he could be that guy, right? Like, nobody has questions. Cade Cunningham is that guy, right? Literally same draft, one pick ahead of Jalen Green. And then you also compare, right? Like guys like Evan Mobley, already a DPOY, player, already an all-star. Scotty Barnes, all-star, rookie of the year. Jalen Suggs, all-NBA caliber defensive player, right? Fits into his role beautifully in Orlando. So all these guys have elevated their games, have done a lot in their 4 years in the NBA. And that's not to say that Jalen Green hadn't done a lot in the role that he had. It's just he hadn't met the expectations, the level that the Rockets needed him to be at for them to be able to win at the highest level. And so I think in that light, it made it kind of easy to identify, hey, if you want to improve the team, this is the direction you're going to have to go. A big part of it is also the financial considerations, right? So obviously Cade got his rookie max extension, and that was like a no-brainer from the Pistons. For the Rockets, they didn't give Alperen Sengun and Jalen Green flat rookie max extensions, right? Rafael Stone, who is a lawyer through and through, played hardball with them, and he got Sengun on an incredibly team-friendly deal, like 5 years, $180 million or whatever, which is like a little less than what his rookie max would have been. And then for Jalen Green, he signed a very unconventional, like 3 years, $5 million deal or something, about at average value of like $33 million a year, with a player option in that final year. And a big reason that the Rockets probably had Jalen Green sign that contract as opposed to just letting him, walk to restricted free agency or something, is it made him trade eligible this summer. And that was a big part of the calculus, is knowing that, hey, all right, we know we're going to have to make a big move. We know that we want to be able to be competitive. And look, maybe the Rockets, had they not been the 2 seed, had they not won 52 games and, had a really competitive first round series against the Warriors, maybe they would have been more willing to slow play it, give Jalen one more year to run it back and revisit next offseason or at the trade deadline or something. But given the jump that this team took this past year, I think they were able to identify, hey, we're ready to contend. We don't think we're that far away from the OKCs or the Nuggets or the Pacers of the world, right? You get a guy like KD and it gives you at least a puncher's chance against OKC in a 7-game series. And they look, at the end of the day, OKC isn't like some crazy juggernaut team, right? Pacers took them to 7, Nuggets took them to 7. Like, they're not this unbeatable team like the KD era Warriors, right? They are a beatable organization. And so the Rockets feel pretty confident that they can do that now. Back to the young player side of things, right? They also know that down the line, they're going to have to pay Amen Thompson, right? And they've already got Sengun on the books. They know they're going to have to pay Amen Thompson. They have Jabari Smith Jr., his extension's already inked. We're waiting to hear about Tari Eason's extension, but in all likelihood, they're going to try and extend him as well. But knowing Rafael Stone, he's probably playing hardball with Tari as well, trying to get him on a value contract as opposed to just giving him what he probably deserves as a player. But that's his job, right? His job is to try and, extract maximum value from a contractual standpoint. So I think when you start to compare that to the Pistons, right, they haven't really, I guess, been put in that kind of tough position of identifying, hey, where are we wanting to allot our money? And I guess that's where their first major decision comes this offseason with Jaden Ivey, right? What do you do with Jaden Ivey? Has Jaden Ivey done enough to guarantee an extension? Has he done enough to guarantee a rookie max? Where is he at? And that's actually, I want to flip that back on you. Where are things at with Jaden Ivey? And are the Pistons just are they going to max him out the gate? Are they going to try and get him on a favorable contract? How does the injury play into his contract negotiations moving forward, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I feel like this offseason, Jaden Ivey, I don't think has shown enough to get anywhere close to a rookie max. And the injury does complicate things. And I think Jaden Ivey probably is looking at the Jalen Green extension and saying, okay, well, why shouldn't I get somewhere near what Jalen Green got? Why can't I get what he wants? And then the Pistons are looking at it like, we're not going to give you that. We're not giving you that much money. The Pistons have said over and over that they're interested in bringing these guys back and having extensions for them, but if it makes sense for the team. And I've heard throughout the offseason that they have a pretty good idea of where they want to pay both these players, Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren. And it feels like they're pretty set at it. Look, if you're not going to come down to this number, if this is not the number you guys want, then we're fine going into the season and just playing it out slowly here. But I feel like Jaden Ivey's kind of in the same situation that Jalen Green was in with the Rockets, where it's like all offseason when you ask the Pistons or you ask a Pistons fan, you ask someone in the community, or even if you ask Trajan Langdon, when they asked about why this offseason was so quiet, you asked them, well, Cade's him. Why don't you have a second guy? Why didn't you go out and try to get like a star? They'll respond and say, well, we have Jaden Ivey coming back. If you ask why, you lost Malik Beasley and THA, what are you going to do about the shooting? Well, Jaden Ivey's coming back. Like if you ask any question, it's just going to be a response of, well, Ivey's coming back. So they have this same question. I said this on a few podcasts ago that Trajan Langdon, it seems like, is not so much prioritizing taking the next jump win-wise as far as like he's prioritizing that over getting answers. Seems like he just wants answers. And if it's a good or bad answer, he wins either way. I just want answers is basically what it seems like his perspective is. And if the answer is Jaden Ivey's that dude that takes them to the next level, then that's great. And they win more games. If he isn't, well, maybe we don't win enough games, but at least I got my answer. I win anyways. Like, I think that's how Trajan's looking at it. And to flip it around back at you again, Cade, I felt like, because I've talked about this a lot on my podcast, especially towards the end of this year when the offseason first started, Houston, at least from my point of view, and from a lot of Pistons, there's a little bit of a civil war going on in the Pistons community. But so I'll say part of the Pistons community.
It's okay. There's always a civil war going on in the Rockets community, so it's all good.
No one ever agrees on everything. I wonder if OKC fans, like, do they all, like, after you win a championship?
Nah, man, it's got to be all kumbaya over there. I can't imagine that there's any like J-Dub stands over there who are like, J-Dub should be the main guy and SGA is trash. Like, that's not how this works. Like,
I was gonna say,
they just want a title. They just want a title. They can screw off.
But there's a little bit of a civil war in the Pistons community because it's like, okay, Cade has established that he is the guy. That's like the main question you want to get out the way, and he's answered that. So once you get that answer, shouldn't then every year after that be about prioritizing and maximizing the window of Cade? That's what some fans feel like, and I feel like I had some of those questions as well heading into this offseason. I feel like when I looked at Houston, it felt like Houston kind of decided, like, look, even, again, this is my perspective, was, look, even if Sengun isn't top 10 or like, maybe a superstar, we have Sengun, we have Amen, we have two guys that we really buy into being pillars, cornerstones of this franchise, and we're winning games. It's time for us to maximize this window, and they went out and did that. So some of the confusion from some of the Pistons fans, like, okay, well, if Houston did that, like Houston drafted Sengun in the same draft class as Cade. Cade has made All-NBA team. Cade has proven that he is the guy. Why is Houston so much more aggressive in maximizing their guys' window, and the Pistons are maybe slow playing theirs? That's kind of like where some Pistons fans are at here.
I can really easily identify that, and it all goes back to how these rebuilds actually started. The Rockets got an influx at the beginning of their rebuild, even though it wasn't like a young blue chip prospect, right? They didn't luck into like an SGA like the OKC Thunder got back for dealing Paul George, but they got back all of Brooklyn's future draft capital. And that future draft capital from Brooklyn directly turned into 1, Tari Eason, and 2, Reed Shepherd. So that's 2 of their members of the young core. And then on top of that, they then leveraged that draft capital, traded it back to Brooklyn, who then traded Mikal Bridges to New York. And Brooklyn traded Phoenix's future draft capital to Houston. And so because of where the Rockets were at as a direct result of how they managed the James Harden trade, they have been flush with draft capital from the Nets and now the Suns that they've subsequently used to leverage in trade negotiations and whatnot. So in particular, right, this blockbuster deal for KD, it only worked because the Rockets owned that number 10 overall pick from the Suns in this most recent draft, and the Suns turned it into Kaman Malawach. They also sent a handful of second-round picks that they got Rasheer Fleming with, which I'm so low-key jealous of. I like Rasheer Fleming a lot. But that's why those trades were able to work. And they still own more of Phoenix's future draft capital, so they might be at the table again with the Suns in a couple years when it comes time for, maybe Devin Booker demands a trade. And they're like, you know what? All right, let's go. You guys want to put Book on the table? You guys want your draft picks back because you're going to be bad? Here you go. Like talk to us, right? Come play ball. And so I think that was a significant element in the Rockets feeling like they could go after KD, because part of it was the price for KD was so ridiculously low, right? You might tell yourself that giving up Jalen and Dylan and a number 10 pick is a lot for, a 36-year-old Kevin Durant. But at the end of the day, it's a win now move. It's also a move that doesn't prevent them from winning later. A lot of teams, you hear the term, championship or bust or whatever. There is no bust in the after for KD, right? It's like once KD's ready to hang him up, whether that's 2 years from now, 3 years from now, hell, with KD's skill set, I could see him being like an elite hooper, 6-man off the bench into his 40s if he really wanted to, right? He's going to age. His game is going to age beautifully because of his skill set. So that being said, like the Rockets still have this really bright future with those cornerstones, those pillars in Amen Thompson and Alperen Şengün, to where even once KD is no longer the best player on the court, the best player on the team, they still have an incredibly bright future, and they have the assets on top of that, their own future draft picks, the Suns picks. They have a really juicy pick from Dallas down the line. They still have one pick left from the Nets deal. Like all those picks are going to help them go chase the next star player that they maybe want to trade for to be able to stay at the top instead of dropping back down after being in this contention window. And I think that's the main difference between where the Pistons are at and where the Rockets are at. They have extra draft capital that they were able to afford to shoot at an available star like KD. They pounced on it. They made it work. And the Pistons have that opportunity, right? The Pistons could have easily made a deal like the Magic made for Desmond Bane, right? Like they could have gotten Desmond Bane themselves if they really wanted to go pair like a borderline all-star, whatever. But Detroit didn't identify Bane as like the piece that was going to take them over the top. And that's where you got to be really careful. You don't want to make an all-in move and then have nothing left unless that move actually puts you at the top. And so Detroit has to play it smart, right? And I think that at least for right now, while you're still kind of sifting and identifying the rest of these young guys, right? Can Jaden Ivey be that guy? That's what this year is going to be really important for. And to your point, right, this is going to be year 2 of JB Bickerstaff. So year 2 of Jaden Ivey playing under a winning caliber head coach. Shout out Monty. And so like it's going to be a different situation for him. And the Pistons Trajan Langdon should have an answer by trade deadline or the end of the year to be able to identify, okay, cool. Are we sticking with Jaden Ivey, or do we need to move him to go get a better running mate for Cade Cunningham?
Yeah. And I think that is a great explanation from Jackson. I'm sure Pistons fans love hearing that, because Trajan has talked over and over to the Pistons fans about how they need to get more assets. We're trying to be better about asset management. And that's something that Troy Weaver, during his time with the Pistons, I talked about it probably almost every episode, that they were just putrid with their asset management. The Pistons don't have any extra picks. They don't have any extra first rounders. They don't have a large chest of treasure assets where, like the Houston Rockets, where if they do go make a move, like you mentioned, Jackson, they can make another move next year if they really want to. They can make another move at the deadline if they really want. Like they're not, they have a lot of ammo still. The Pistons, if they do make a move, how much ammo will they actually have left over afterwards? And it seems like that's where Trajan's really just trying to stock up, trying to get as many assets as possible. So when he does want to make the move, it's not like that was his final shot and that's all he had. So it makes sense, but we'll see how things go this year for the Pistons. But coming up, I do want to talk with Jackson and just compare these teams, see how far behind is Detroit and what are the expectations for both of these teams heading into the year. Houston seems like it might be a little bit higher, obviously, than the Pistons, but we'll talk about it all coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by OpenPhone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or a service provider. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait around, see if they call you back, you wait around for them? Probably not. You moved on, and that's why you need OpenPhone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. Open Phone lets me manage business calls and text from a single app, and their AI agent handles all after-hour calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss out on a customer. Open Phone is offering my listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over for you at no extra charge. So that's with Open Phone. No missed calls, no missed customers with Open Phone. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons and Locked On Rockets your first listen of every single day. We appreciate all of you guys. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on, or obviously go over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. Pistons fans, I want to let you know, I want to catch up to Jackson, okay? Jackson is way ahead of us in subscriber count, okay? It's not fair. So we got to catch up. I don't even know how many thousand we're behind right now. We're at like 11. I think we're at like 12,000. And I was like, oh, this is pretty good. We're doing good. Then you go over to Locked On Rockets, you're like, holy bleep. So, like, Piston fans, 40% of you guys don't listen, that do listen, aren't subscribed to Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button so we can catch up to Locked On Rockets.
Hey man, look. First off, it's first off, we ain't got to compare numbers because the work you're doing over here is incredible. But I want to just highlight here. I was like the 3rd or 4th NBA show that got put on YouTube. So like I was out way ahead in the race, like way early on. Like I think we started on YouTube like right before the 2021 draft, right before Jalen Green and Şengün and all that. And so it's just like, sometimes it's just, if you're an F1 fan, right? I had pole position. I was P1 in this race. Okay. And that's the issue. So you were all the way back there, P11, P12, whatever it was. And so you're playing catch up. So it's Locked On screws you from the jump, man.
Right.
That's actually, what it is.
We really got to go at Nick. That's really who we need.
Hey man, anytime we can take a shot at Nick, we're all about that. So
I saw him say earlier today that he's going to miss doing Locked On Slovenia as if he doesn't have Locked On flag now. It's like, dude, come on.
Right?
Man.
Come on, dude. Just plant the flag and stop being ungrateful, man. You lucked out, with the biggest like save in history with getting Cooper Flag. I don't want to hear any belly aching from that man.
All right, let's get into expectations for these teams moving forward. So, obviously, I think all Pistons fans can be honest with themselves. The Houston Rockets are much ahead of the Pistons right now. We'll see where the Pistons end up at the end of this year, but the Houston Rockets are considered to be Western Conference contenders. And I'm sure a lot of Rockets fans and a lot of people in Houston feel like they could win the title if things break their way. So, Jackson, what is the expectation for Houston this year after making this deal for Kevin Durant? I thought it was really cool that you mentioned earlier that even if they don't, obviously the goal is to win. I'm assuming you're going to say the goal is to eventually win a championship with KD, but even if they don't, because everything is not put into the KD era, it's not like it's a bust. You still have years after that to keep going. So with that said, what are the expectations then?
Yeah, I think it's very clearly that the expectation is to win a title with KD. You don't trade for KD at this stage of his career just because you're like, oh, we need like a veteran presence or we need like this leader. No, you're trading for KD because you believe full stop that you have a legitimate chance to win a title. And I think that on paper, right, you still give OKC the benefit of the doubt. They're the defending champions, but they're also an incredibly young team. We know just how hard it is to repeat in the NBA. Haven't had a repeat champion for the last, 7 years, 6 years, whatever it's been. And so there's like a window is open there, right? And again, I said it earlier, OKC looks beatable at times. And so now the Rockets, they doubled down on their defensive identity. They added a bunch of defenders. They added that tier 1 guy in Kevin Durant. So yeah, the expectation is absolutely title for Houston. But it's also like, that's the thing is, and I think for Rockets fans, this is going to be the tough thing to grapple is only one team of all 30 teams can win the title each season, right? If you're at a stage where like, it's championship or bust because your team has no future assets because the stars are aging or they're in their prime or they're slowly aging out of their prime. That's understandable. To be like, no, the only bar is like, you got to win a title. For the Rockets, they're still straddling that fence of like, yes, they want to win a title. Yes, they should be in the conversation for winning a title, but it's not the end of the world if they don't win a title, right? Yes, it would be disappointing to trade for Kevin Durant and fall short of that expectation, but the other benefit here is even if let's say they make it to a finals or a couple Western Conference finals and they ultimately lose out to the Nuggets or the Thunder or whoever, that experience is still going to be so invaluable for the other young guys on the roster, right? For Şengün, for Amen, for Jabari, Tari, Reed Shepherd. All 5 of those guys are going to learn so much from playing alongside Kevin Durant and also having these, ideally, right, deep postseason runs. We saw just how important the couple early postseason runs were for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, right? He got a taste of the playoffs his first year with the Clippers and then year 2 with OKC, where Chris Paul dragged that team to the 5th seed in the bubble playoffs, the Disney World situation during COVID. So, like, all of that early experience, I think fully, like, it's not the only reason SGA became who he is today, but learning to play that high level basketball at such a young age absolutely does wonders for a player's development and for their overall career trajectory. And so I don't look at the KD thing as, if they don't win a title, it was the wrong move. I think it was ultimately the right move, because at the end of the day, like, I don't know what Jalen Green's future is ultimately going to hold, but I wasn't super bought in on him being the guy that the Rockets felt like he needed to be for him to be the best version of himself for this team. Hopefully it works playing alongside Devin Booker. He's got an archetype of a player that he can try to emulate a little bit better, seeing him every day in practice. Hopefully that helps elevate his game to another level. But it ultimately just didn't work out here in Houston. And so I think that the Rockets didn't sacrifice a ton. Like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You've still got a ton of assets and a ton of, optimism for the future, even post KD. So I think that's kind of where they're at in Houston.
Yeah, so obviously Houston's going to have a lot higher expectations than the Pistons this year. I think Houston.
Hey, no. Pump the brakes there. The expectations should be reasonably high for Detroit because the East is wide open. Like, Detroit should be they should be a top 4 team in the East.
Right. Yeah, I think. And see, that's where, like, the Civil War goes back and forth, because I think if the young guys improve, they should be a top 4 seed. But then there's also, like I mentioned earlier, there's a section of the fan base that's like, the East is wide open. So why didn't you go out and try to make a move to where maybe Cade could have really made it happen in the East with it wide open? But then it's also about, okay,
who would have been the move then? So, like, this is my question to you, Pistons fans, dear Pistons fans, listeners, viewers, like, who would you have traded for? Who's actually, are you going to go get Lauri Markkanen? Like, what's the guy?
Like who's the main name?
Who's the guy that you want Trajan Langdon to push all the chips to the center of the table? I don't think there's a name out there that you would feel great. Like, hell, I know there are Magic fans that are upset about going all in on Desmond Bane. Like, I like the move for Desmond Bane, and I do think that Bane, Wagner, and Banchero is a great big 3 for that Magic team with that defense that they have. Like, I think it's going to work. I think it's going to be solid. I think Orlando's probably the 3rd best team in the East this year, personally.
I have the same thing.
But, like, that was a good name for them to go after, right? And that was the name that they felt would catapult them over the top. It also addressed kind of their biggest weakness, which is just the offensive side of the ball. Their defense is legit. The Pistons aren't quite yet to that point of knowing, like, hey, this is our one big weakness, or this is the one big thing that we need to take that next step. They're right there, right? When you're like just on the outside looking in of having both a top 10 offense and defense, that's really, actually, no, defense was top 10. I apologize. It was 10th in defense and 14th in offense or something.
Right.
So, like, the Pistons are right there, man. And I think that's why it can be really hard for fans to want to have that little bit of extra patience of, like, I think the Pistons need that one more year to just see, what does Jaden Ivey have? What else do they have with Ausar? What do they have with Ron Holland? And part of that is for the Rockets, right? They drafted their stars in 2021, right? Jaden Ivey still has a chance to become a star, but he was drafted a year later. And not only that, he got injured, right? He could have been on, like, y'all could have gotten the answers you needed from Jaden Ivey this past season had he not gotten injured. Right. That could have been his defining season where it's like, no, okay, he's the Robin to Cade's Batman. No more questions asked. Build around these 2 guys moving forward. And then maybe Trajan Langdon could have been in a position to be like, okay, now I know what I need to go get to flesh out this roster and really put the right parts around those 2 guys. Unfortunately, that injury set them back a little bit to where now you have to move forward, and now you have to use this next year to kind of identify that. And hell, maybe a player shakes loose at the trade deadline, and maybe that's when we see Trajan Langdon make that swing. But I do think that the Rockets were given the opportunity because their 2, like, star potential players were in 2021. And so it gave them an extra year over the Pistons compared to Jaden Ivey, who's been in the league 1 year less than both Cade and Al P and Jalen Green also. So he needs that one more year to figure out what he's got. Because for Jabari and Tari, right, I still think Jabari has some room to grow into maybe a elite third option kind of thing offensively, but I don't know that he's probably not ever going to be a star, right? But he's an elite role player. Tari's an elite role player. Amen Thompson has been used as an elite role player so far in his career, and he looks like he can maybe take the significant step this next season, but Amen Thompson's also a freak of nature, so it's kind of a different discussion with him. And hell, look, the Pistons have his brother, right? So it's like, Ausar has a lot of the same capabilities as Amen Thompson. Maybe not quite the ball handler that Amen is. He's more of like the ancillary kind of, off-ball role player type presence. But Ausar still has like all NBA DPOY potential, all that stuff. It's all right there. So I think for Pistons fans, as an outsider looking into the Pistons, I think it's got to, like, you just got to hold on to that little bit of patience for like one more half season or a year. And then next year is really where like the pressure turns up for Trajan Langdon, where like, that's where he's going to have to go identify and make a move. And the fact that you're still experiencing success despite not making one of those all-in moves, like, appreciate it, man. The fact that like the Pistons were in the playoffs and had a competitive first round series this past year, that's huge for all the young guys on the roster, man.
Yeah, we'll see. I think they could come to a decision with that kind of thing, even at the deadline, like you mentioned earlier. Just see how these guys, because
you never know who's going to shake loose,
right? And because of, like you said, Ivy gets hurt last year, Cade got hurt his second year. You just haven't gotten the sample size with Cade, Ivy, Ausar to figure out, okay, can these guys actually be the reason why you take this next step or not? So I understand why Trajan's taking the patient route. I think we might see something happen at the deadline, if not, next off season. But we're gonna wrap it up here. Jackson, I think the Houston Rockets should be in the Western Conference Finals at least next year. Hopefully the Pistons win a playoff series. I think that will be the expectation of a lot of Pistons fans. Before we say goodbye, I just got to ask you, just real quickly, covering a Thompson twin, just how crazy is it? Like, how, like, some of the, Ausar does things when watching the Pistons. I'm just like, bro, how in the hell did he do that? And everyone knows I love Amen. And I think Amen, even though how much I love Ausar, Amen's obviously like a tier above as a prospect. Just tell me just real quickly how fun it is to cover Amen. I love the Thompson twins.
It's legitimately absurd because at least like once per game, he does something that is so unbelievable that you just like your jaw drops and you're like, how? He's got like this insane ability to jump with like no load up, right? Like he just jumps from like a standing jump, like, and a quick second bounce off an offensive rebound, or watching him like lock in the way that like LeBron does, or like back when LeBron, like prime LeBron, like in transition, like the Iguodala block, like Amen does that occasionally in transition where he'll just like Terminator lock onto a guy and just sprint past like 6 other dudes in transition and then go get like a poke check from behind or a block from behind, a recovery block, something. And it was even wilder. It was against the Warriors in that game 7, the second half of game 7, that third quarter, man, there was a stretch where like Amen Thompson, it was like when I've talked about this a lot on LOR, but just there was a moment where it was like Amen Thompson, it's like everything slowed down, like he was Neo in the Matrix, and he kind of realized, he was like, oh, I'm him, I can do whatever I want. And he had like 3 or 4 straight takes to the basket where like nobody on Golden State could stop him. And it's like once he realizes that he can do that whenever he wants, he's going to become unstoppable. Like there's a reason that like I keep teeing it up. I'm like, he's going to be a weird hybrid between Russell Westbrook and Giannis, but with a supercomputer for a brain like LeBron James. He's going to be a top 10 player in the NBA one day. It's not an if, it's a win.
Yeah, I absolutely love him, man. I can't wait for it. I can't wait to see him with the ball in his hands more this year. And I
also,
can't wait for
the interview with him and Ausar was awesome, by the way. Like, I loved the whole like who's who with both of them. We're both Batman. We're both one half of Batman. Like that's the most twin thing that you could have said. I also love that like Ausar was like, hey, how are you going to win a title if you're not in Houston? Like Ausar, Amen said that to Ausar. Just a lot of some good nature ribbing between brothers. I loved it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love covering the Thompson twins.
Did you get the slam cover?
Yes,
I got it too. I got the slam cover. I got all of it. I was like, oh, another Rocket on the slam cover.
You gotta get a t-shirt too. You gotta get the slam t-shirt.
I got the t-shirt. I got the mag cover, and I got both magazine covers, the one with both twins and the one with just Ausar. So
no, I can't wait for it, man. But hopefully Houston has a great year. I'm hoping Amen really takes off this year. I would love to see that, and I hope Ausar takes off for the Pistons like I think he can. I think he can become a top 50 player this year for the Pistons this year. So thank you, Jackson, for the crossover. First time. I hope everyone loves it. I hope everyone thought it was a lot of fun. Appreciate all of you guys making Locked On Pistons and Locked On Rockets your first listen every single day. Hit that subscribe button down below. Leave us a 5-star review or whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. And until next time, we'll see you guys later. Until next time, peace out, everybody.